Welcome to today's podcast episode of Little by Little Homeschool. I am blessed to be joined by Amber O'Neill Johnston from Heritage Mom, and she's going to start off here and just share a little bit about herself.
Oh, hi. I am outside of Atlanta, Georgia with my family, my husband Scott, and our four kiddos. They are 15, 13 girls, and the boys are 11 and 9. All of them have been homeschooled from the beginning, though Scott and I are originally from the Midwest. I'm from Illinois and he's from Ohio. We met here at the Art Museum in Atlanta, like a good future Charlotte Mason family. And, we've kind of been doing this life together ever since.
Love it. That's a fun story. So that I think if you meet somewhere like that, you both have the same interests, and that kind of starts things off pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
So in your books, you've written books, you've got a blog, you have all kinds of things. You do speaking, but in your book, you give advice about how to build your library with quality books, just like any good Charlotte Mason mom, right? And some of the things you mentioned, some of your quotes are not all diversity is good diversity, look beyond skin tone, ethnicity, and multiculturalism is not the end game. Can you elaborate on these quotes?
Definitely. So, in A Place to Belong, I wanted to set the scene for what a family that's looking for to present their children with an expansive idea of education and to include learning more about themselves and learning deeply about other people. And when we do that, sometimes we can get really excited and jump on the diversity bandwagon. And as someone who's a huge proponent of diversity in children's literature and other resources, on one hand, that makes me very excited. But on the other hand, I've seen where sometimes parents can, while they're aiming for diversity, they end up always pointing out how everyone is different. And there's some good qualities to that because we are all different. We have different cultural markers and different experiences and viewpoints. But when that's the only thing we talk about, we sometimes send a message to our children that we're all more different than we are the same. And so when it comes to diversity, I like to say that we're looking for two things: how this person or this culture is different than us, but also how much they are the same. So they have grandparents who love them. They enjoy feasting at holidays, even though they may be different holidays with their families. And they might like to go fishing with grandpa and snuggle up with a good book. And there's some of these things that may transcend cultures and locales. And so I think that's why not all diversity is good diversity. And in terms of looking beyond skin tone and ethnicity, those are the most obvious forms of diversity. They're ones that I practice and focus on a lot, even in my own home and in my work. As an African American family, I'm always looking for representation for my children and other people in the materials we use. However, diversity is actually a much broader term. It's not just about your culture, your ethnicity, or what you look like. It could be who else lives in your home. Maybe you have a multi-generational home. It could be whether you live in an apartment or out in the country. It could be, even with the United States being so big, it could be living in a different region. So now that I've been raising a family in Georgia, I can say definitively this is like another country compared to Illinois, where I grew up. We have significant regional differences within our own country. And then when you're talking about people in other countries, that's even more expansive. But there are so many different forms. People have different learning styles, different physical abilities, and different personalities, different life experiences. Sometimes people have had significant deaths in their families. These are all forms of diverse living and diverse experiences that could show up in children's literature and the other things that we're doing. So we want to look beyond just skin color and ethnicity. And then the last one, multiculturalism is not the end game. The point isn't really just to shake things up and be multicultural as the end of the goal. The actual goal is that our children build relationships with other people. And so when we think of it like that, then we don't have to stress. There's no quota here. There's no demand that we do things a certain way or we have enough of this and enough of that. It's much more authentic. It's much more natural because what we're doing is just getting to know people. We're getting to know people and we're sharing our own stories along the way. And so the end game is relationship and not multiculturalism.
That's beautiful and so well put. There is so much diversity, but there's so much in common too. Like you're saying, we could have similar experiences of things, and it doesn't that just transcend those different things. So whether it is something really great, or you're saying like just a tragedy in our family or something, and those can bond. And yes, relationships are so good. And I feel like young children are good with this stuff. And, it's us kind of getting in the way and bringing up things and kind of pushing something that maybe they aren't naturally inclined to, but just looking at it as a broader picture. So thank you for all that and elaborating on that. And that's from your book, Place to Belong. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll talk more about those too and everything, and I'll link those. Don't worry, everybody. But you also speak a lot about books as mirrors and windows. Can you explain what that means and why you think it's an important concept for families?
Yeah, definitely. So I love this idea. I did not come up with it myself. I read about it in a paper from the early 90s from Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. She was a professor at Ohio State, and she talked about this idea of books being mirrors, literary mirrors, books where children can see their own experiences and their families and communities reflected back to them. And that can come through, it's prismatic. It can come from a lot of different directions. So for my children, that could be stories about other Black people. That could be stories about other homeschoolers. It could be stories about that take place in Georgia. It could be stories about a set of four siblings. The list goes on and on. And so these mirrors are books where our kids can read them and say, I can relate to that, or I'm like that too, or I know about this, and this author is telling a part. It may be a small part, it may be a large part, but a part of my family. They're telling a part of my experience, and they connect with that. Books as windows are books where our children get the chance to see things or see life through someone else's eyes and to witness their experiences and kind of walk a day in their shoes, if you could, with through as much as you can through the pages of a book. And this really builds empathy, it builds compassion, but it's also just really good story. Kids love reading about other people, whether it's fantasy books and fantasy worlds, or books of a kid across the country or across the world, or even stories about, yes, definitely stories about kids who look different than them, but also stories about kids who just live differently or have different experiences. And that can cause our children to feel closer to people that they haven't even actually met in real life. And when there's actually another aspect of that called sliding glass doors. And so books as sliding glass doors, your child relates so well to what they're learning about how someone else is living that they now see themselves as part of that story, and they can picture and envision themselves interacting with those people. And that's kind of like the highest order. It's a beautiful thing. So, and a lot of books are both, right? So if we go back to the example of a book about African Americans or Black American families, that'll be a mirror for my kids. But if the book takes place in the inner city, in a single parent household where there's a lot of urban strife and maybe violence, that is a window for my kids, right? That's not a world they've ever seen, known, or experienced, but they are Black. So it's a mirror too. And most books are some of both.
I love that word picture because I can see it now. When the distinction, I wasn't quite sure. I was like, okay, how can there be a mirror and then a window? And then you start explaining, my mind kind of kept going, ooh, I think I know the answer to the window now as you're explaining the mirror. So that's really cool. Do you use this sometimes as a gauge or as a way of choosing new books for your kids?
Definitely. I mean, the goal, I feel, is to have a fairly balanced bookshelf. And almost like in the Bible, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. And so I kind of always have that in the back of my head as this idea that I'm teaching my children about themselves, but I'm also teaching them to love their neighbors in the same way that they think about themselves. And we're going to spend time digging in and learning about and appreciating both. And I think that for me, my shelves were really unbalanced at one point, very, very unbalanced, in that we had almost all windows and no mirrors. And that can be a unique situation, typically when your children are different than the broader environment, and that can be in a lot of different ways. But in our case, the books, none of them, very few of them had Black people in them. And if they did, I was noticing they were all about slavery. And so it took me a number of years to really expand, and now our home library looks vastly different. And that's part of what launched my brand, Heritage Mom. Then I saw what a difference it made in my kids. I wanted to tell other people. And yes, of course, this my story resonates directly with other people who are racially different in America, but surprising to me, my story resonated with so many people because some people, they were like, oh my goodness, I realized we only had mirrors and we didn't have any windows. And other people were like, this, means so much. My child has autism. And I realized like we never read about other kids who have autism and the connections. My child's adopted. And I never thought about, hey, try to get books with other children who have a similar story. And so it kind of just took off from there. And what I love about it is that it's something that everyone can use. And we're not saying that there's a separate set of books for one group of people or a separate set of books for another. All of our children can grow from all of these beautiful books. I'm just saying that they'll relate to them differently.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let me add one more. The homeschool family like books.
Yeah.
I just remember my kids being younger and it was really difficult. I had to kind of pull away from even some TV shows and stuff because they just didn't understand what was going on because everything with kids was taking place in a school and it was all rotated around a school. My kids were just like, I don't really understand. Now, my older two did go to school, so they had a little bit. My youngest was very confused as to how does this relate to his life for a little while. So I had to kind of pull back. But I feel like there needs to be more books. I mean, not just movies and TV shows and stuff, more books and stuff about kids that are homeschooled because a lot of these kids don't always quite understand when you have like the bullies and all of this stuff and they're like, I don't understand, I don't have that in my house.
Yes, that's so true. There's a series called Operation Sisterhood, and the author, Olugo Vimasola Rude Perkovic, she actually wrote the foreword in my second book, Soul School. But her series, they're novels, and in there, this group of sisters, they are homeschooled, and I didn't know that when I gave it to my girls. And all of a sudden, I hear this like screech from the other room, and I'm like, what is going on? And they run in, they're like, Mom, 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 they're homeschooled. And I was just like, okay. They were jumping all around and so excited. And I was wishing I had captured it on video because when someone asks me why are mirrors important, I want to be able to play that video and say, here's why. This is why. It's better than any words I can share with you.
Love that. So give us the name of that series again and the
It's
author's
called
names.
Operation Sisterhood, and it's written by Olugbemisola Rude Perkovic.
Okay. All right. Good. I love that. I'm hoping that as there's more homeschoolers in the world, that there's more homeschool authors and there'll be more books about people's experience and being able to tie that in. That's so cool. Yeah, I wish you'd gotten that in video too, but it's okay. You have it. You have that memory in your mind too, just of their joy, like that when you do feel. I think especially, when it comes to the homeschool moms are listening, you do feel unseen in a lot of things and a lot of things that, movies and books and all that kind of stuff. But let's go back to the Charlotte Mason stuff. So you are a Charlotte Mason homeschool mom, and apparently that was what you were meant to be from way back, even when you met your husband. So how has this impacted your family life beyond the curriculum you choose and the resources you use?
Well, wow, it has impacted us vastly. It really shifted us towards like a way of life. And in some ways, it's hard at this point, this many years in, for me to pick apart like the parts that were birthed from Charlotte Mason, me studying Charlotte Mason's principles. But I can say for sure this idea of spreading a wide feast, which she talks about in her curriculum, and varied subjects and lessons, but it spills over into our lives, whether it's the music we listen to each evening while we're eating dinner, so it's just playing in the background. If it's how we spend time when we're on family vacations and making a concerted effort even when we're on road trips to see like what pieces of art that we've studied could we encounter along the way if we detour or exit as we're on headed somewhere else. And it has impacted relationships. A lot of people don't talk about that aspect of Charlotte Mason as much, but she talked about the need for, citizenship and this idea of, brotherly, kind of like a brotherly love that we have within our own nation, but then also nation to nation. So our family, we became world schoolers and we've spent significant time outside of the United States with our kids, learning and studying in other cultures with this idea of forging relationships. and brotherly love between nations. And I mean, I could go on, but definitely the books, a huge part of Charlotte Mason is this idea of living books. So we started, of course, reading those in our lessons, like school lessons. But you don't just stop. Like when you become accustomed to great literature, it's not like you're like, oh, school's over today, so let me go read something else. You keep going. And so the books that I have been exposed to, oh my goodness, I mean, it's changed my entire reading life. I've always been a reader, but I wouldn't have chosen to read biographies and historical fiction and things like that. And now they've become some of my favorite genres. So it has impacted my mothering in certain ways. Like one small example, Charlotte Mason talks about, not using like reward systems for kids. Like you get 3 stars and I'll buy you a present or whatever. And that was kind of shocking to me because that seems like the natural way of convincing and compelling kids to do what you want. But since my kids were so young when I read her work, I just never did that. And I've loved seeing how this idea of self-motivation and how it develops in children and how they can grasp their learning and seek to be learners without a reward system at times. So those are just a few ideas.
It sounds more like instead of just putting this style of homeschool, because we can tend to do this with homeschooling, like this is how I homeschool, so we do our curriculum and then, okay, time's up, and then we, close all that up and we're done and we just go about our life. But it just sounds like Charlotte Mason has become your family culture as well. And it's become how you make your decisions and how you spend your time. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful that's impacted you as well. And I think oftentimes we forget how much homeschool can impact us and change us, sanctify us
Mhm.
during our years of homeschooling our children. And to be honest, I've never heard anybody connect the world schooling with the Charlotte Mason. So that was pretty profound. I'm like, that's actually really cool. So where are some of the places that you guys have been?
So we've been to South America and most of the time we were in Bolivia and a little bit of Peru. We've been to Europe. Most of the time was spent in Greece, but also France and England. And we've been to Ghana in West Africa. And our next trip later this year will be in Asia. We'll start in Japan and then move to Thailand. So we're trying to do a stint on every continent except Antarctica before our oldest graduates from our homeschool.
That's really cool. I love the intention. As you're saying the different places, I'm like, okay, there's that concept, that okay. All
Yeah.
right. So now you've got, yeah, getting to the final one. That is
Yeah.
so cool. How long do you guys usually go for?
We aim for 3 months. So if
Okay.
we're, a little short or a little over is fine, depending on the price and, how expensive it is to live and what else is going on. Now that my kids are older, when they were young, we've been doing this since my youngest was 1. He turned 2 in Bolivia. And so we've been at it for a long time. But now that the kids are older, they're like, yeah, we can go do whatever you want, wherever you want in the world. But I need to be back for this event with my friends or, things like that. And we do try to always honor those things. Or if a child says, I don't want to spend my birthday overseas, and some of them do want, I would like to be in Paris for my birthday. We try to make either one happen back home in some dream city, whatever we can do. So yeah, we're flexible, but we aim for 3 months because it's so random. One time Scott and I were in a coffee shop and he struck up a conversation with the guy at the table next to us. And the guy was, I can't remember what his career was he like an anthropologist or sociologist or whatever. And he said that it takes about 3 months to feel like you really live somewhere. And that's where we kind of came up with that 3 month number. So, like, you're figuring out laundry and where to eat. You can't afford to eat out every night for 3 months. You got to master transportation. You start making friends and really like settling into society for, a short term. So, slow travel. And that's what we've tried to do.
What a diverse homeschool even experience for them. I'm sure they see the world differently after being able to travel and being so immersed in other cultures.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the biggest blessings, I think, for my family specifically has been this idea of no matter which country we go to, there have been groups of people at odds with one another. And what was really interesting is some of the countries, the people visibly look the same to us. I mean, in our ignorance, they look the same, they sound the same, they eat the same things, they dress the same, and yet they hate each other or they have a history of problems. And why that's benefited my children is because we can come to the United States and the racial strife that we still have in our country, I can point to the fact that it's not you, it's not personal, but people. People the world over, we fight. We don't get along, we have problems. It's not about you specifically. And I think that that has really, really helped where they can see there are other countries where people look exactly the same. There's no discernible difference, and yet they still feud and struggle. And so, kind of part of this fallen world as an example. So, I think that it has helped so immensely in that way because my kids are just feeling like they know that though they're Black, that the problems that they may experience or things they may see or witness or feel inside aren't about them specifically as people, but rather just another example of the way of humanity.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing in that bigger picture of just a fallen world and just it is a sin nature. It's something that goes on in all countries and in all cultures, and that they can take that bigger picture to it. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you one more question. It might have to do with world schooling. Who knows what it has to do with? But can you share a favorite homeschool memory with us?
Oh my goodness, that one is so easy because I remember one time the kids and we were studying Rembrandt. And I mean, what I didn't know anything about Rembrandt. I mean, I knew who he was, but we were deeply involved in this study, studying his pictures, learning about his life. And then afterwards, I told them, listen, I have to go step away and make a phone call. When I come back, I want you guys to narrate about what we learned about Rembrandt, tell me back what we learned, so on. So I come back in and I sit down and the kids stand up and I'm like, okay, it's about to be a performance. And they break out into this rap song. And I just remember, so we had learned about how Rembrandt went bankrupt in like the 1650s during like economic depression in Amsterdam. And so I come back in and they're like, Rembrandt went broke in the Baroque, because he painted during the Baroque period. And I can't, that's the only line I remember, but the rap had like all these different verses about Rembrandt. And I just remember being so delighted and at yes, their creativity, because of course I'm fawning over my children, but mostly at their happiness and delight and at studying something that I would have considered to be intensely boring when I was their age, and for them to be so lighthearted and happy and open-minded about the things that they were learning. So that definitely stands out as a great memory to me.
That's just a testament to your homeschool and your home environment, and that education is looked at as a good thing, and we can find things that we can enjoy in it. And I would have been with you too. I would have been, in the back of the classroom, probably learning about this, falling asleep or something. But just I just love homeschooling so much, and I just love that it allows kids to love, embrace maybe certain things that they wouldn't have if they were just being forced to just having to memorize it and then regurgitate it on a test. And that we can add so much fun, and the fun together as siblings is always so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me today, Amber. Where can the listener connect more with you? Where can they find out about your books? Head to your website. Where are all the things that they can go to?
Yeah, the best place is my website. It's heritagemom.com. And I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Heritage Mom Blog. And if they specifically want to know about my books, the websites are A Place to Belong book.com and soulschoolbook.com.
Perfect. I will link all of those in the show notes. So, listener, I encourage you to go over and connect more with Amber. So, Amber, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.